Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People story.
Ever heard of a mother suing her own son? Well, mine did. She tried to force me to become a doctor by holding my late father's 50,000 trust fund hostage. Little did she know that lawsuit would be the key to my freedom and her downfall. What did my lawyer find out that turned the whole case upside down?
I need to tell this story because I still can't believe how it all went down, and honestly, writing it out might help me process some of the residual anger I'm still dealing with in therapy. My mother was a control freak who treated parenting like running a military dictatorship. I'm an only child, and after my dad died when I was 7, she poured all her energy into shaping my future. That's what she called it. What it actually meant was that every aspect of my life from age 7 onwards was micromanaged to an insane degree. Piano lessons 4 times a week even though I had zero interest in music. Dance classes that made me miserable. Academic competitions that gave me anxiety. Scheduled playdates with children of families she approved of. My reading material was vetted. My TV time was monitored and limited to educational programming. I had a summer schedule that was busier than most adults' work calendars. My childhood was basically a series of activities I hated but had to excel at, because anything less than excellence meant I'd disappointed her. And disappointing her meant days of coldness, passive-aggressive comments, or just being completely ignored until I apologized for whatever failure she perceived. Looking back now, I can see how messed up it all was. At the time, I just thought it was normal. Strict? Sure, but normal. The breaking point started in high school. I was 15 when I took my first computer science elective. The teacher, Mr. Harrison, was this old-school programmer who'd worked in Silicon Valley back in the 80s before moving back to our town to teach. He made programming actually interesting, showing us how code could create anything from games to tools to art. For the first time in my life, I felt like I'd found something that was mine. Not something my mother had chosen for me, not something I was doing to meet her expectations, something I genuinely loved. I'd stay after class to work on projects, I'd go home and spend hours teaching myself additional languages beyond what we covered in class. I joined online communities, started contributing to open source projects under a username my mother didn't know about. I felt alive in a way I'd never experienced before. Obviously, I made the mistake of telling my mother about this newfound passion. Her reaction wasn't immediate. She listened, nodded, said something vaguely encouraging. But over the next few weeks, I noticed her mood shifting. She'd make little comments about computer science being fine as a hobby, but not a real career. She'd leave articles about physician salaries on my desk. She started talking more and more about how I was going to be a doctor, speaking about it as an established fact rather than a suggestion. When I was 16, she sat me down for what she called a serious conversation about my future. "You're going to be a doctor," she told me, not asked, told. I tried to explain that I wanted to study computer science, that I was good at it, that there were incredible careers in tech. She cut me off. "Absolutely not. I didn't raise you to waste your potential sitting in front of a computer screen all day. You're gonna be a doctor, you're gonna help people, you're gonna have respect and status and a career that matters." I argued. God, did I argue. I showed her statistics about computer science careers, salary projections, job growth. None of it mattered. "This discussion is over," she said. "You will study pre-med in college, you will become a doctor. This is not negotiable." But I kept pushing back over the following months. I took more CS classes, I entered a regional coding competition and placed 3rd. I thought maybe if I could show her I was serious and talented, she'd come around. Instead, she got more controlling. She blocked certain websites on our home internet. She started requiring that I spend a certain number of hours each week shadowing at a local clinic she'd arranged. She enrolled me in chemistry tutoring I didn't need, eating up time I would have spent programming. The final confrontation happened right before I was supposed to submit college applications. I'd filled out applications to schools with strong computer science programs. She found them. The fight that followed was the worst we'd ever had. She screamed that I was ungrateful, that everything she'd done was for my own good, that I was throwing away my future. I yelled back that it was my future, not hers, that I was nearly 18 and she couldn't control me forever. That's when she dropped the bomb. "You want to know who's paying for college?" she said, her voice suddenly cold and quiet. "I am. Your father's life insurance money, which I've been managing for you. $50,000 that's sitting in a trust with me as the trustee. And you know what? If you don't do exactly what I say, you won't see a penny of it." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I'd known about the life insurance money, but I'd always thought of it as mine, as something my dad had left for me. The idea that she could just withhold it had never occurred to me. "That's my money," I said. "Dad left that for me." "Your father left it in a trust for your education," she corrected. "With me as the trustee. That means I decide how it gets used. And I'm not going to watch you waste it on some fly-by-night computer degree when you could be saving lives as a physician." She laid out her terms. I would apply to her approved list of universities. I would enroll in a pre-med program. I would follow the exact path she'd planned out, which she'd apparently been working on for years, every class, every extracurricular, every summer internship. "You will do exactly what I tell you to do, exactly how I tell you to do it, or I will cut you off completely," she said. "You'll get nothing from the trust. You can take out student loans like everyone else and pursue whatever foolish dream you want, but don't expect any help from me." I was 17. I had no money of my own. I'd never had a job because my schedule had always been too packed with her approved activities. The idea of taking on massive student loan debt terrified me, especially since she'd spent years telling me how important it was to graduate debt-free. So I caved. I agreed to her terms. But here's where the malicious compliance comes in. She was so confident in her victory that she made a critical error. She gave me a typed document, printed out and everything, listing her exact expectations. She wanted it in writing, she said, so there would be no confusion, no arguments later about what I was supposed to do. I still have this document saved. I've looked at it 100 times. It lists out everything. Enroll in pre-med program at approved university. Maintain enrollment in required science courses. She listed them: biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, physics, etc. Volunteer minimum 10 hours per week at hospital or medical facility. Join pre-health professional society. Participate in activities that demonstrate medical career interest. Maintain regular communication about academic progress. Notice what's missing? She never specified I had to get good grades. She said maintain enrollment in required science courses, which just means not failing out completely. She never said excel or achieve honors or anything about GPA. She was so confident in her control, so absolutely certain that I would naturally try my hardest at whatever I did, that she didn't think she needed to specify these things. So I made a decision. I would follow her instructions exactly, literally to the letter, while putting all my real effort into computer science. I applied to a large state university from her approved list, one that happened to have a very good computer science program. She approved it because it also had a well-regarded medical school. I enrolled in pre-med as she demanded, and then I did exactly what her document said I had to do, just exactly what it said, nothing more. I enrolled in every required science course, Biology 101, Chemistry 101, all of them. I attended classes, I took notes, I turned in assignments, but I never studied more than the bare minimum needed to pass. I maintained the minimum GPA needed to stay enrolled as a full-time student, which was a 2.0. Some classes I got C's in, a few D's, 1 C- in organic chemistry that I'm still kind of proud of because that class was legitimately hard and I barely tried. Meanwhile, I loaded up on computer science courses as electives. Those I aced. I was getting A's and A+ in CS while scraping by with C's and D's in pre-med requirements. I volunteered exactly 10 hours per week at the hospital, not a minute more. I'd show up, do whatever basic tasks they gave me, watch the clock, and leave the moment my 10 hours were up. I joined the Pre-Health Society and attended the exact minimum number of meetings required to maintain membership, which was 1 per month. I'd show up, sign in, sit in the back, and leave. For activities that demonstrate medical career interest, I attended a few free lectures on campus about health topics. That counted, technically. I maintained regular communication about my academic progress, calling her every week like she required. She'd ask how things were going, and I'd tell her the truth. I was enrolled in all my required courses, attending classes regularly, maintaining my volunteer schedule, and participating in the Pre-Health Society. All technically true. She'd ask if I was studying hard, and I'd say I was keeping up with my coursework. Also true. I was keeping up with the bare minimum. She'd ask about my classes, and I'd tell her what we were covering in biology or chemistry. I'd mention things I'd learned during my hospital volunteering. I'd talk about meetings of the Pre-Health Society. She'd sound satisfied, pleased even, thinking everything was going according to plan. It took her almost 2 full years to realize something was wrong. During one of our regular calls in the middle of my sophomore year, she asked me something she'd never directly asked before. "What's your GPA?" I could have lied. I'd thought about what I'd say if she ever asked. but I decided the truth would be more satisfying. 2.3, I said. There was a long silence on the phone. What did you just say? 2.3. My GPA is 2.3. She absolutely lost it. Started screaming about how I could possibly have such terrible grades. What was I doing with my time? Was I partying? Was I lazy? How dare I waste her money and my father's memory like this? I let her wind down, then I very calmly said, I'm doing exactly what you told me to do. You are absolutely not. I am, I interrupted. Hold on, let me get the document you gave me. I put her on speaker and read through her instructions point by point. You said to enroll in the pre-med program at an approved university. I did. You said to maintain enrollment in required science courses. I'm enrolled in all of them and passing all of them. You said to volunteer at the hospital 10 hours weekly. I've done exactly 10 hours every single week. I have my timesheets if you want proof. You said to join the Pre-Health Society. I'm a member in good standing. You said to participate in activities that demonstrate medical career interest. I've attended multiple lectures and events. You said to maintain regular communication about my progress. I call you every week. You know damn well I meant. You said I had to do exactly what you told me to do, exactly how you told me to do it, I continued. Those were your words, and I have been. You never said I needed to get any specific grades. You never mentioned GPA at all. You said maintain enrollment in courses, which just means passing them. If you wanted me to achieve specific grades, you should have written that down. I could hear her breathing hard on the other end of the line. You did this on purpose, she said. I did exactly what you told me to do, I repeated. Nothing more, nothing less. She started yelling again, saying that obviously she'd meant for me to excel, that any reasonable person would understand that I was deliberately sabotaging myself just to spite her. Maybe, I said. But you were very specific about what would happen if I didn't follow your plan exactly. You said you'd cut me off, that I'd get nothing, so I followed your plan. Every single requirement you specified, I've met. If you cut me off now for doing exactly what you told me to do, that seems like it's your problem, not mine. That's when I could hear the realization hitting her. She'd backed herself into a corner. If she admitted I was technically following her instructions, she couldn't punish me without looking completely unreasonable. If she claimed I wasn't following instructions, I had her written plan proving I was doing exactly what it said. She tried a different approach. Fine. New requirement. From now on, you need to maintain a 3.5 GPA or better. That wasn't part of the original agreement, I said. You said I had to do exactly what you told me to do or I'd get nothing. I'm doing what you told me to do. If you want to change the terms now, we should probably discuss it with a lawyer present since we're talking about a significant amount of money and a legal trust. That shut her up. I knew it would. She went very quiet. Are you threatening me? She finally asked. I'm saying that if you want to change the terms of what I have to do to receive the money my father left for me, maybe we should make sure we're doing it properly, legally. Since you're the trustee and you have a fiduciary responsibility to act in my best interest. I didn't actually know much about trust law at that point, but I'd done some research enough to know that trustees had legal obligations. Another long silence. I need to think about this, she said and hung up. She didn't call me for 3 weeks after that. No regular check-ins, no communication at all. I figured she was trying to decide what to do, maybe consulting with someone about whether she could actually cut me off or change the terms. During those 3 weeks, something else happened that changed everything. I'd been working on an app idea I'd started back in high school. I'd been refining it slowly for about 3 years total at this point, building it piece by piece whenever I had time. It was a productivity tool aimed at college students specifically, something I'd built to solve problems I actually had. I'd soft-launched it during my freshman year and had been slowly building a user base through word of mouth in student communities and some very targeted posts in college subreddits and Facebook groups. Nothing spammy, just genuinely helpful comments where I'd mention the tool when it was relevant. After about 18 months of gradual growth, it started gaining real traction. First hundreds of downloads, then thousands. Students were telling other students about it. It wasn't going viral or anything, but it was growing steadily, organically. I wasn't making much money from it, just a small subscription fee for premium features that most people didn't pay for. But it was real, it was mine, and it proved I could actually build something people wanted. When my mother finally called back, I told her about the app. I thought maybe it would prove to her that I was serious about computer science, that I had actual skills and potential in this field. Instead, she dismissed it entirely. "That's nice," she said, in a tone that made it clear she thought it was anything but nice. "But we need to talk about your medical school prospects. With your current GPA, you're not getting into any respectable programs." "I'm not going to medical school," I said. Just like that, I'd been planning to keep up the charade for at least another year, milk the trust money for as long as I could while building my CS skills. But something about her dismissiveness, her complete inability to even acknowledge what I'd accomplished, made me snap. "I'm not interested in medicine. I've never been interested in medicine. I'm switching my major to computer science, and I'm going to work in tech. That's what I'm doing with my life." The fight that followed was nuclear. She screamed, I yelled back. She called me ungrateful, stupid, a disappointment, a failure. She said my father would be ashamed of me. That one hurt, and I think she knew it because she repeated it. I told her that Dad would probably be proud I was standing up for myself instead of being her puppet. I don't actually know if that's true, but I wanted it to be. She told me I was cut off. Effective immediately. No more money from the trust. I was on my own. "Fine," I said. "I'll take out loans." "I'll work. I'll figure it out." And I did. I got a part-time job doing IT support for the university. It didn't pay great, but it was something. I took out student loans for my last 2 years. I officially changed my major to computer science, and my GPA immediately shot up to a 3.7 because I was actually trying in classes I cared about. I thought that was the end of it. Painful, expensive, but over. I was wrong. About 6 months after she cut me off, I got served with a lawsuit. My mother was suing me to reclaim the tuition money she'd already paid for my first 2 years of college. She claimed I'd obtained it fraudulently by lying about my intentions to pursue medicine. I couldn't believe it. My own mother was actually suing me. I scraped together money for a lawyer, a solo practitioner who handled trust disputes and took my case for a reduced rate after I explained the situation. His name was Jerry Hoffman, this guy in his 60s who'd been practicing family law forever. Jerry looked over all the documentation, the trust paperwork, her typed instructions to me, records of my enrollment and grades, everything. "This is going to sound strange," he said, "but I think her suing you might be the best thing that could have happened." "How?" I asked. "Because now we get to look at how she's been managing the trust. And if she's been misusing her position as trustee, we can get her removed and get you access to what's left of your money." Discovery was a beautiful thing. During the lawsuit, we got access to all her financial records for the trust. And Jerry was right. She'd been misusing her position. She'd been paying herself a management fee that was way above what was reasonable. She'd been using trust money to pay for things that were supposedly educational expenses for me, but that I'd never received or benefited from. Thousands of dollars to an educational consultant who turned out to be one of her friends. Money for tutoring that never happened. She'd also been investing the trust money in some extremely questionable ways that benefited her more than me. It was complicated financial stuff that I didn't fully understand, but Jerry explained that she'd basically been treating my trust like her personal piggy bank. We filed a countersuit, not just to defend against her lawsuit, but to have her removed as trustee and to recover the money she'd misappropriated. The lawsuit dragged on for about 8 months, which was stressful and expensive, even though I was confident in my case. I was working more hours, taking a full course load, and dealing with court dates and depositions. My stress levels were through the roof. But slowly, things started turning in my favor. Her lawsuit claiming I'd defrauded her got dismissed. The judge basically said that I'd fulfilled the requirements she'd set out, and her failure to specify academic performance standards wasn't fraud on my part. That felt good. The countersuit took longer. There were hearings, testimony, expert witnesses about proper trust management. My mother showed up to court looking like the victim, crying about her ungrateful son who was attacking her after all she'd done for him. But the financial evidence was damning. Jerry was methodical, walking through every questionable transaction, every inflated fee, every suspicious expense. In the end, the judge removed her as trustee and appointed a neutral third party to manage what was left. My mother was ordered to repay the money she'd misappropriated. The amount that came back to me after all the legal fees and everything was settled ended up being somewhere in the $35,000 to $40,000 range. Not the full $50,000 the trust had started with, but enough to make a real difference. I used it to pay off a chunk of my student loans and cover my last year of tuition. But the money wasn't even the most satisfying part. The legal proceedings became sort of public record, not like it was on the news or anything, but in our family and social circle, people found out. Court documents are accessible if you know where to look, and apparently several family members went looking. My mother had spent years cultivating this image of the perfect devoted parent who'd sacrificed everything for her son. She'd told everyone who would listen about how hard she worked to give me opportunities, how much she'd invested in my future. Now, people knew the truth. They knew she'd been controlling and manipulative. They knew she'd mismanaged money that my father had left for me. They knew she'd sued her own son rather than accept that he wanted to make his own choices. Family members started reaching out to me. My aunt, my dad's sister, called me crying and apologizing. She said she'd always thought my mother was too strict, but had never realized how bad it was. Some of my cousins contacted me. Even my maternal grandmother, who'd usually sided with my mother on everything, called to tell me she was disappointed in how my mother had handled things. The situation damaged my mother's reputation in ways that money couldn't fix. Her book club friends, her church group, her neighbors, people started seeing her differently. Some of them distanced themselves from her. Others stayed neutral or still took her side. She definitely had people who believed her version of events, where I was the ungrateful child who'd turned on her after all her sacrifices. But enough people saw through it that she couldn't maintain the perfect image she'd cultivated. I heard through the family grapevine that she'd started getting excluded from certain social events, that conversations would get awkward when she tried to complain about me. People didn't want to hear it anymore. Eventually, about a year after everything was settled legally, I heard she'd moved to another city to be closer to her sister. I don't know if the move was related to everything that happened or just coincidental. Maybe she needed a fresh start somewhere people didn't know about the lawsuit. Maybe she was just tired of the awkwardness in our hometown. Either way, she left. We haven't spoken in over 3 years now. She's tried to reach out a few times through family members, usually around holidays. The messages are always vague, something about how family is important and we should work things out. But never an apology, never acknowledgement that she did anything wrong. So, I don't respond. My aunt asked me once if I'd ever consider reconciling with her. I told her honestly, maybe if my mother ever genuinely apologized and acknowledged what she did, but I'm not holding my breath. People like her don't usually develop that kind of self-awareness. Meanwhile, my life has actually turned out okay. Better than okay, honestly. I graduated with my computer science degree. My GPA ended up being a 3.65, which was solid. The app I'd been working on kept growing. I never hit it big or anything, but during my senior year, I ended up selling it to another indie developer who wanted to scale it up. It wasn't a massive acquisition or anything like you hear about in tech news. More like a private sale that netted me about 18 months of salary worth. Not life-changing money, but enough to pay off the rest of my student loans completely and build up some actual savings. I got a job at a decent tech company right out of college. Not a huge name, but a stable company with good benefits and reasonable hours. The pay is good. More importantly, I actually enjoy what I do. I like the problems I solve. I like my coworkers. I don't dread Monday mornings. I'm in therapy now, dealing with all the stuff from growing up with a mother like that. Turns out having every aspect of your childhood controlled and then fighting a legal battle with your own parent leaves some psychological scars. Who knew? My therapist is helping me work through it. Some days are harder than others. I still sometimes catch myself seeking approval in unhealthy ways, or getting anxious about disappointing people even when it's not rational. But overall, I'm building a life I'm actually proud of. I'm making my own decisions. I'm pursuing things because I want to, not because someone's forcing me to. That might sound basic, but for someone who spent most of their life being controlled, it feels revolutionary. I've started dating someone who actually understands what I went through. She had her own complicated family situation, so we get each other in that way. It's nice. I still think about my dad sometimes. I wish he'd lived long enough for me to know him as an adult. I wonder what he would think of how everything turned out. My aunt tells me he was a kind person who wanted people to be happy, so I'd like to think he'd be okay with the choice I made, even if it meant fighting his wife and going through hell to get here. The one thing I've learned from all of this is that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally are the ones who place the most conditions on that love. And sometimes the only way to be free is to be willing to lose everything they're holding over you. My mother tried to control my entire life by controlling my access to money, and for a long time it worked. But once I was willing to walk away from that money to take on debt and struggle and fight, she lost her power over me. The irony is that if she'd just supported me, if she'd let me pursue what I was passionate about, we might still have a relationship. I might have still become successful, just in a different field than she wanted, and she could have been part of that. Instead, she pushed so hard to control me that she lost me completely. Sometimes I wonder if she realizes that, if she understands that her need for control cost her the only child she had. But like I said, I'm not holding my breath. I'm just focused on living my life now. The life I chose, the life I fought for, and honestly, it feels pretty damn good. The next one is a malicious compliance story. This took place long ago on a military base in Georgia. I was a Huey helicopter crew chief at a small airfield with only a couple dozen people at best in our detachment. I was getting ready to eat lunch alone in our small flight shack. Normally, the technical inspector sergeant would have been with me, but his wife was having a baby. I already had my day planned and was halfway through pulling maintenance. Then I heard a helicopter landing in the distance. I identified it as another Huey and dismissed it because we did not have any birds in the air. A few minutes later, a captain carrying his helmet bag breezed in, tossed his helicopter logbook onto my desk, and announced, "I'm going to get lunch and need my aircraft pre-flighted before I get back." He did not even slow down to look at me. If he had, he might have noticed that I had just started my own lunch. I had never seen this guy before, and his uniform patches identified him as a Georgia Army National Guard captain. Apparently, he felt a lowly enlisted E-4 crew chief was beneath common courtesy. Oh, and he was most definitely not my boss. Okay, Mr. Captain Arrogance, I was going to give him the best maintenance pre-flight inspection he had ever had. By the way, pilots always do their own shorter pre-flight inspection too. He was gone for 3 hours. During that time, I gave that aircraft the best inspection it had ever received. When we inspected an aircraft, we wrote down every deficiency we found. Next to each one, we drew a black or red pencil mark noting how serious the deficiency was. A minor issue might get a slash mark. A serious deficiency earned a circled red X, meaning the aircraft could only be flown under limited conditions, such as daylight only. A plain red X meant the aircraft was grounded, period, not flyable. Well, wouldn't you know it, I found several minor issues, 3 serious circled red X issues, and the mother of them all, a red X grounding item. The slippage mark on the transmission bolt housing was cracked. For context, a slippage mark is a small stripe of fingernail polish or paint that goes down the bolt and onto the mounting plate. What did that crack actually mean? Maybe the bolt was slipping. Maybe the fingernail polish or paint had simply cracked. Maybe someone had nicked the paint with the small blade from the utility knife in their issued toolbox. Who knows? I had never written that many serious deficiencies on one aircraft in my entire career. His unit must have had poor maintenance. When the captain returned in a big hurry to take off, he was mad as a hornet. He demanded that I erase the red X mark. "Can't do that, Captain. It's in the regulations." That was true. Only a maintenance tech could re-inspect it, oversee the correction, and enter the inspection notes clearing the aircraft for flight. By then, the captain had stormed out to his aircraft to challenge my findings. While he was back at his aircraft fuming, I called the maintenance tech at the hospital and explained the situation. He said, "Tell Captain Antsy Pants I'll be there at Aero 800 tomorrow morning. I won't be available until then." The captain returned, now boiling with rage. "So get the maintenance tech here now," he demanded. He's at the hospital. His wife is having a baby." The next closest available maintenance tech was in Savannah, which was a short flight away if you had a flyable helicopter. So our maintenance tech finally showed up the next morning. He knew exactly what I had done and why, and he rightly defended every deficiency I had noted as absolutely correct. We had to get the big breaker bar to re-torque the transmission bolt, and it took about 3 hours to sort through the other deficiencies. So Captain Antsy Pants got to spend an unexpected overnight stay at Camp Swampy because he was a jerk. Be nice to the little people who support you. The next one is an entitled people story. Business was far busier than usual. I was the only employee on the team who spoke English, so I spent half my shift supervising the front end and the other half acting as a walking Google Translate. As if that weren't enough, there were only 2 supervisors on duty, me and B. Unfortunately, she had essentially been kidnapped by the store's POS system alongside the store manager trying to solve a cashback issue that simply refused to work. They were trapped in that nightmare for hours, which meant the entire front end was now my responsibility. I'd already been running around non-stop for over an hour when one of the cashiers called me over. It was A. Anyone who knows A knows her name suits her perfectly. She's an angel. Even on bad days, she's usually calm, or at least smiling. As a supervisor, I can often tell what kind of problem I'm walking into just by looking at the expression of the employee asking for help. The moment I saw how completely drained she looked, I was already surprised before I even reached the register. Dear God, what happened now? I thought to myself. Hey, what's going on? She answered right in front of the customer. This guy doesn't have any money. That alone caught me off guard. Hearing a sound that impatient was rare. That's when I finally looked at the man. The first thing that stood out was his size. He was wearing a bright orange t-shirt that clung tightly enough to reveal every contour of his body, paired with shorts, flip-flops, an uneven beard, and sunglasses at night. I have nothing against overweight people, obviously, but first impressions matter, and that entire combination looked like it had been assembled specifically to make people uncomfortable. Before I could even ask a question, he spoke. She doesn't accept the value of knowledge. Don't you know the value of knowledge? At that exact moment, I felt the entire weight of my shift crash onto my shoulders. Hours without stopping. Customers calling my name. Foreign tourists looking for me in the aisles. Employees asking for help. One supervisor trapped in cashback hell. And now some philosopher trying to reinvent the monetary system over a $1 pack of cookies. I took a breath. I decided diplomacy deserved one chance. What do you mean we only accept the usual methods of payment here? Apparently, something I said bruised his ego. Listen, brother, my watch is worth more than all of you. He raised his arm to show me a black and gold analog watch. I don't know the first thing about watches. It could have been worth $50 or $50,000. At that moment, I couldn't have cared less. Doesn't it matter what I have to offer? Later, A told me that before I arrived, he'd spent several minutes talking down to her and repeatedly trying to get her to validate his bizarre ideas. That only confirmed my first impression hadn't been wrong. That was where my patience ended. I dropped the diplomatic expression. So you don't have any money, right? Next time you decide to visit society, learn how it works first. Nobody here cares about your watch or your knowledge. Here you either pay or you don't get the product. Bye. I canceled his purchase immediately. Honestly, on any other day I probably would have argued with him for a while. I might have even enjoyed talking to a guy that bizarre. I'm no stranger to other people's stress, and if someone wants to complain, I'll usually hear them out and keep arguing until the issue is completely settled. But that day, I was the one slowly going insane. The moment I canceled his purchase, cleared the register for the next customer, and turned to leave, he tried to stop me and keep complaining. He never got the chance. 3 stock clerks practically intercepted me. For the love of God, come help with the foreigners! It genuinely felt like I was being escorted straight from one problem into another. The difference was that the tourists understood how the system worked. They weren't trying to reinvent reality. They just needed someone who could translate. So off I went, following the guys through the store. Oddly enough, hearing their voices was almost a relief. At least this was a problem I could actually solve. According to my coworkers, after I walked away, he decided to demonstrate the full extent of his emotional maturity by making the classic banana gesture with his arms at my back. For those unfamiliar with it, it's an old mocking gesture in Brazil where someone bends one arm and slaps the inside of their elbow with the other hand. A childish way of saying, "Ha! Screw you!" Think about how ridiculous this sequence was. The guy tried to buy a pack of cookies without any money, tried to pay with knowledge, flashed his watch, lost the argument, made a childish gesture after I left, and somehow I was the banana. By the end of the shift, the whole thing had stopped being stressful and had turned into just another retail story. I spent a good while laughing about it with the stock crew. That's retail. Some days you deal with customers, some days you deal with characters, and only the strong survive. Anyway, thank you for watching.